1 minute to go. Welcome to the special edition of Waverly Newspapers. Usually we are delivered to your doorstep or at your fingertips in a digital format at the paper's website or on our Facebook page, clearly a sign of evolving times. And tonight we are on cable. We are being beamed right into your living rooms, an example of the commitment of the Waverly paper to bring attention to the importance of this upcoming election. I'm Anelia K. Dimitrova. I'm the newspaper's editor, and I'm the host of tonight's forum, which I call Meeting of the Minds. In the 13 years I have been at the paper, we've had several of those forums right in the chambers here. And in my mind, this is one of the great benefits of having a hometown paper with a 159-year history. I took the liberty of bringing the very front page of the Waverly newspaper here tonight. At the time, it was called the Waverly Republican, and the date is March 8, 1856. So this is a copy of the original, the very first paper that was published by the newspaper that whose legacy we maintain. Now we are called the Waverly Democrat and the Bremer County Independent. And at the time the first edition came out, the newspaper cost $150 per year, $1.50 per year. Now we charge $1.25 per issue, and we are again the Waverly Democrat and the Bremer County Independent, and we hope that whatever we put in here is worth your dollar. I'm joined tonight by a group of fellow citizens here, distinguished citizens I would like to call them, and they all have stepped forward and they've thrust themselves into the public light, and I commend them on their willingness to be here tonight, and they all want to contribute to the development of this community. I hope that all of you will agree with me that the candidates for office, despite their differences, are united in their desire to better the city and to leave a meaningful contribution and a meaningful legacy for their children and their grandchildren. Let's give them a round of applause, please. It really takes great courage to move oneself very purposefully from the role of a private citizen to the role of an elected public official, and especially a member of the local government. Working in local government, as you know, is where democracy interfaces with citizens in the most tangible way, and hence, who gets elected on November 3rd, who gets to sit around this table later on for the next 4 years or for the next 2 years in the case of the mayor, should be of great significance to you. Thank you to all of you watching us here tonight. Thank you for the members of the live audience who are here and showing us their support. I also want to thank those of you who will watch us later and at home at your convenience. And last but not least, I want to recognize my journalism students who are seeing firsthand the perspective from the trenches up, and this is otherwise known as local journalism, and how it intersects with local politics. This is the only forum the newspaper will hold prior to the election. We welcome your feedback, your letters to the editor, and also your paid advertisement, which I'm sure our general manager will, she's responsible for the bottom line. I am responsible for having all the fun talking to you. So she would appreciate your advertisements if you have a big set of coffers waiting for you. But in essence, this forum here is a public service initiative of the paper, something journalists do for a living. It is also more of a community conversation than a debate, and it is not a presidential debate, which means since CNN will not be polling the viewership afterwards tonight, there'll be no incentives to bash your opponent. For our purposes, you'll be addressing me and refrain from addressing each other if you can. And a couple of other points of clarification. The questions asked here have not been shared with any candidate. I have interviewed every single one of the people around here, with the exception of Dwayne Little, whose profile is coming up in the next edition of the paper. So nobody knows what the questions are. They're solely my responsibility, and I take responsibility for the questions. First question. Let me start with the challengers, as the incumbents have an inherent advantage, as they happen to be in the public eye at least twice a month for a couple of hours during televised council meetings. Starting with the mayor's challenger, Dwayne Little, and then following the ward order and ending with the at-large post, tell us who you are and why you're running for office.
Well, my name is Dwayne Little. I lived in Waverly since 1981. I moved here because it was in the middle of the farm economy, and the small town of Sumner was being devastated by that bad farm economy, and Waverly felt like a place that had opportunity. So that's why I moved here. I run a body shop in Sumner. I run a body shop in Waverly. It turned into a fiberglass boat repairing place. I got 40 years of experience in a variety of different kinds of businesses, and I've invested in various other businesses outside the ones that I run. This applies to Waverly. Waverly should be run like a business. It's a $25 million a year business, and we have a large number of employees. We have a large number of contracts and various things that have to be approved and dissected so that the public is protected. And those are skill sets that I've learned by running businesses. And I appreciate your vote on November 3rd and your confidence in me.
Okay, let's go to Ward 2 challenger, Bob Brunkhorst.
Hello, I'm Bob Brunkhorst. I've lived here all my life. I work at CUNA Mutual. I've been there about 25 years. I graduated from Morris College and also graduated from UNI. My wife, Chris, is out in the audience, and she's an adjunct professor, and she does substitute teaching at our local schools. I have two kids. Carolyn's a junior at Wartburg College studying nursing, and she also works at Bartles. I have my son, Zach, who's a junior in high school, and he works at Fairway. So that's kind of my family. Been active in the community all my life. You know, Waverly's an awesome place, just truly awesome, and I just want to make Waverly even better. You know, I don't have what I want to run for is just, we got to look at our budget, making sure we have sustainable budgets, making sure that we, look long-term in our capital planning. So that's one thing I want to bring. Council effectiveness, those are things that we can improve on, making sure we have proper communication to the public, and also making sure our meetings are run orderly. Lastly, transparency. Transparency can add a lot to our community. One thing that I did when I was mayor was push to have it on the internet. And making sure that we have information to the public in a timely manner so they see it, and also that we can discuss it in a timely manner. So those are things I like to run on. And once again, Dan is a good person. I'm not running. Dan has nothing. Dan is a very good person. I just don't want to say that I'm bad-mouthing Dan at all. So that's what I'm running on.
Okay, I forgot to tell the audience, and those of you who have never met our candidates before, that I have the privilege of sitting between two mayors. I'm sandwiched between a former mayor and a current mayor. And so that's a great place to be here tonight. And that's what Bob meant when he talked about being a mayor of Waverly at one time. He was just that. Let's just go to Ward 4. It's a very interesting ward. The incumbent, the person who is holding this position right now, has decided not to run for office, has other priorities, and 3 people have stepped forward. Quite unusual for a ward seat, but 3 people are vying for that position. Let's just hear from you. And the way people are arranged around here is they are arranged in alphabetical order. So let's just start with Adam Hoffman.
Thank you. Adam Hoffman, lived in Waverly here for just over 2 years, almost 2.5. Live here with my wife of 9 years, Brandy. She works here at Waverly Health Center. She's been there for 7, almost 8 years now. I have 3 children, 8, 7, and 3. They are here in the Waverly Shell Rock School District. We actually open enrolled our children into Waverly Shell Rock because of the strength of the school district and our hopes to move into the community when my son was first eligible to enroll into kindergarten. To say that I have a platform for what I want to accomplish is not the case. My platform is your platform, and even though I'm on the ticket as Ward 4, whoever's going to fill this seat, hopefully it would be myself, is going to represent every single person in every single ward with the vote that's cast up here. So it's very important for you all to realize that he's Ward 4, it doesn't matter to me. Well, it matters to me that your input. I've already started to field, questions via email on how would you respond to this? How would you respond to that? I've gotten phone calls, Facebook communications. I've got a page out there. Feel free to chime in after this to ask me those things. I want to, like Anelia had mentioned at the introduction, is looking forward to my longevity here at 35 years of age. I want to retire here. I want my children to stick around here and be part of the community, and I want to set a good example of being involved in the community.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Let's go to Mike Scherer.
My name is Mike Scherer. I am a 7-year, going on 8-year resident of the city. I haven't taken a poll, I may be the only person up here who has lived in Waverly 3 different times. Maybe that's because I keep wanting to come back here. I went to Wartburg College in the dark ages, 1959 to 63, and then came back briefly in the late 70s, and then came back here to retire. Adam said he wants to retire in Waverly so he could take lessons from me. I've been doing this for 7 years, and I can tell you this is a great place to retire. My wife and I went through a process of trying to decide where we belonged after I finished my career as a journalist editor in Minneapolis. And I can tell you that all my friends in Minnesota wanted to know, why would anybody in his right mind leave the Twin Cities to retire in Iowa? And my response was, there's a lot of great stuff in the Twin Cities, but we're going to a small college town, and I just happen to know it's a great place to be. And what I also have told people is that when you live in a place like Waverly, you can have the benefits of a city, because at Wartburg there are so many cultural events. If you went to them all, you would never stay home. I go to a lot of them. But what I also tell my friends is that there's no commute here, there's no traffic jams. I think that's a benefit. And the community has a lot of folks in it who are intellectually curious, which I happen to like. But Waverly is also a place that has a reputation. And the reputation that I have discovered about this city is that people who don't even live here seem to have a high opinion of it. And they like to ask me why that is. I travel around northeastern Iowa a lot. 2 weeks ago I was in Dubuque, and I was talking to a fellow about his background, and he told me all the towns he had lived in. He said, "Where do you live?" I said, "Well, I've retired in Waverly." His eyes lit up. He said, "Waverly, Iowa. Now there is a cool town. I wouldn't mind living in Waverly, Iowa. What do they do over there to make that place what it is?" And I said, "Well, it would take a while to explain it. You could probably come over and check in at City Council, although I don't imagine a lot of people would come here to do that." I really do like the statement that I saw in the literature at the Chamber of Commerce, and I understand this may have come from the mayor, the current mayor, but I can't prove it. And that is that Waverly strives to be a destination community. Now, I'm not sure exactly what that means, but I take it to mean at least 2 things. One is people want to be here. They want to live here because this is a good place to live. It has a high quality of life. I want to help to make sure that continues. Second thing is that people like to come here because things happen in Waverly. And when I sit in the stadium at Wartburg, I notice people are coming in from all over the place. So those are things
Mike,
that I think are helpful. This up.
I'm sorry about this. You need to wrap this up because we have to be, although I said it's not a presidential debate, we still need to keep a fair amount of time for other people. But thank you for that. And let's just hear from Ed White. You can tell Mike is a storyteller, by the way. He loves to tell stories. And in full disclosure, you need to know that he also, at one time or another, wrote for the Waverly newspaper. and he also covered the city council as a writer for us. So, in full disclosure, I owe you this explanation. Ed.
Yeah, my name's Ed White, and I've been in Waverly ever since 1964. And I came to the Waverly Air Base, but eventually gravitated to Wartburg College, where I graduated in 72. And the one thing I'd like to say, in the 60s, Waverly was such a great city. It was not a progressive city. And I want to get this out. We had two mayors that I vividly remember, Fred Gaylor and Emil Roa. And if they saw what we're doing today, they would be appalled. This is why I'm running for city council. That's all I want to say now.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Short statement, obviously fraught with emotion. You used the word appalled. We want to find out why in a minute here. But let me, in the meantime, finish with the challengers. There's one other person on this other side. His name is Gerald Kaplan. Please, Gerald.
My name is Gerald Kaplan. We first came to Waverly in 1968. From 1975, the first time from Storm Lake, working in the grocery business, transferring in 1975 to Humboldt, and holding all positions within those stores. We lived in 8 different towns, and I have to say that Waverly is the best because it's twice that we've lived here now. And we then come back to Waverly in 1990 for the second time, where we've been ever since. I'm also a Vietnam-era war veteran. And my wife, Phyllis, is a retired nurse from Bartles. And I are the parents of 3 adult children, 2 of which graduated from WSR. And all 3 went on to UNI, graduating. 1 graduate magna cum laude, 2 graduated I'm sorry, I misworded that. 1 graduated cum laude, 2 graduated magna cum laude. We're very proud of that effort. Not very many families can do that. Since this is my first run for public office, I may not have all the answers now, but with hard work, I will learn the ropes. I will champion the cause for holding down costs for Waverly taxpayers. And finally, my children enjoy coming back to Waverly for visits, saying how nice the community is. Thank you.
Okay, very well. Let me now go to incumbents, and now it's time to mix things up, and we'll start with Edith and go this way, talking about why do you want this high blood pressure, thankless, underpaid job with so much public scrutiny and so many headaches?
Well, I think it's for the same reasons that I think just about everybody so far has articulated. Waverly is a great place to live. It is a thriving community that is the envy of many. I have similar experiences to what Mike Scher and others have reported about people who come to visit here. I also have a real deep-seated belief that you have a responsibility to give back to your community, and I've tried to do that in a lot of different ways, serving on different boards and on the Planning and Zoning Commission and other not-for-profit organizations here in Waverly over the 26 years that we've lived here. So I think, to me, it's just a general obligation and responsibility of a citizen to do what they can with their gifts. Everybody's will take a different form, but I've tried to plug in where I think I can contribute something. And I think it's really because Waverly is such a great place. I feel like I owe it to the city, to the citizens, to give back what I can.
Okay, and Chuck?
Many of you know I was born and raised here in Waverly, and my parents were leading business people in town, and I kept a relationship with Waverly as I pastored Holy Family Lutheran Church in Chicago and led two community organizations, built a housing complex and a school. I'd spent every holiday here in Waverly my whole life, and my mother's still with us at Bartles. Raised 2 children, both graduated from Wartburg College and doing very well. When I returned to Waverly, I was encouraged to run for public office, to run for mayor, and I was privileged to be elected. It's been a privilege to serve for 2 years as your mayor, to be able to help our town gain that energy that causes the growth, that keeps the taxes low, that enables us to have a town that we're proud to live in, and to be able to bring a town pride that becomes almost the envy of the entire state. So with the transparency that we have tonight, we have every council meeting, we have the public input on every agenda item. We come tonight as a town that's feeling part of the process, part of what's going on, that we can build a better tomorrow.
Okay, and Dan McKenzie?
Sure, after everybody's had their opportunity, what can I add? Again, I came to Waverly by way of the Waverly Hospital in 1960, and to my mother's chagrin, I was born on February 29th in 1960, so I've got a little uniqueness there. But being a lifelong resident of Waverly, I've watched other people give back to the community, and the effort that goes into trying to make the community a positive one. I think we paid dividends from folks behind us. So a little bit with Edie, I feel it's my responsibility to pay forward. I guess I come into this position after having spent many years working within the community with nonprofits, United Way for 6 years, and the president there. I'm currently a member of the Exchange Club, and our focus is on child abuse. But it's an organization that, again, I was a president of. So the step into city council was kind of a natural step after getting a real good grounding in the community. I see what goes on at this table having to fit with whatever else goes on in the community. So having that insight into some of what the nonprofits are dealing with, some of the school system issues, I think gives me an opportunity to take some of my leadership skills and my ability to kind of dissect things into pieces and make sure they all fit together when we try to make decisions. That, and I just like working with people and helping solve problems. And when the phone call comes or the email comes, that's just an opportunity for me to step forward and help folks. So I'm looking for that opportunity to continue another 4 years.
This next question is also very lighthearted but very serious at its core. What is your philosophy of city government? And this question will go to the Ward 3 candidates. What is your philosophy of city government? And then we'll just do Bronkhorst Ward 2, and then we'll do the mayor, and then we'll do the at-large. Starting.
You want us to pretend that we're in Ward 3?
No, I'm sorry, I misspoke.
Yes, Ward 4.
Ward 4, okay, I misspoke,
Okay.
I'm sorry. What's your philosophy of city government? How do you see yourself serving? How do you see the relationships on the council working? What is the relationship between the mayor and the council? Go.
Okay. I got baptized by fire, I guess you could say, last June, not this last June, but the June before, of having the privilege of being a volunteer or invited guest council person. Thank you, Mayor. And being able to see and witness the internal operations as much as you can in that position is very rewarding. The responsibilities of city government, whether it be in our position or in the fire service or anybody that's in a public viewpoint, is there to serve. And when you put yourself out there to serve, that's what you have to do. I recognize a few business people in here. I'm not going to call you out by name, but being your voice to supplement your efforts to run a business, which is where the community grows, and to draw other businesses in. Friendly competition with businesses is wonderful. Inviting more of those aspects to come in is a big thing. But sitting at this seat, working all together with a common goal, you're not always going to vote the same way. And it is your vote for your ward with what you feel is most important, but being open to receive the input from your ward, from your community that you represent, in casting that vote in favor of what they want you to do. That's what representation is. That's what a democracy is.
Okay, let's go to Mike. We need to keep those a little bit shorter, if we may, as we move forward. Philosophy of the city government.
The editor mentioned that I was reporter for city council meetings for over 3 years. And last night I made the comment to somebody, it was like watching how sausage is made. And now I am trying to decide if I want to help make sausage. And you have to wonder why a person would want to do that. I think I have a reasonably good idea of how the city works, certainly in the council chamber. And I believe that the city of Waverly does a better job at this than a lot of places where I have been and where I have observed. I think that city government has a responsibility to serve the needs and the interests of the people. It ought not to be serving special interests. It should not be allowing interests to be bulldozed. On the other hand, I think that if we can find out what the common good is and find a way to serve that, I think that's what we ought to be doing.
Okay,
I think that's
Mr.
about
White?
Yeah, like I am running because I think this council, I've been to many council meetings, is not run like a business. We need to run this like a business, and it hasn't been run like a business. And they pick winners and losers. I've been in Waverly, like I say, for a long time. I've run a business for 30 years. I've never gotten a dime from this city. I think this city's a great city, but I'm a little tired of this council sitting up here picking winners and losers, and then not one of you people want to even talk about it. And that's all you do is pick winners and losers. And I can start citing examples if you want, but go ahead.
Let's just leave it at this. We're going to Ward 2. Mackenzie and Brunkhorst, what's your philosophy of city government? Yeah.
Three things. We're a board of directors, per se, so we got to be accountable to the voters. So making sure that all of our actions, you reach out and talk to the voters on those. Council, kind of what Ed says, council needs to set a policy. Council shouldn't be out there just picking out, this is the flavor of the month. We should set policy as a council, let staff execute. So that's going to be an important thing. Lastly, budget. I mean, one of the biggest things that a council will do is set the budget, and so that takes a lot of time and effort to go through it because we got to be accountable to the citizens once we do those three actions.
Okay, and then Dwayne Little and Mayor Infeld. I'm so sorry, Dan. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
I wonder if I got to be last again.
No, I'm sorry. I just jumped the words.
I guess I look at it as two responsibilities. One is there are a lot of core services that need to be delivered to a community, police department, fire department, garbage, solid waste, those type of things. So I think the council has to put policies in place, put the funding in place to make sure those things happen. I guess I'm always amazed when we do our community survey, solid waste becomes the highest rated city process. That means we're doing something right. The other is, I think it's just, as others have alluded to, one of the best ways to keep taxes down is to grow the community. If we don't grow the tax base, if we don't draw individuals into the community, either to be business or residents, pretty soon we have to pass on those fixed costs to a smaller and smaller group. So that's probably the most difficult part of the job is trying to decide where the community should go and then the partners that can help us get there.
Thank you. Dwayne?
I'm going to have to agree about the budget. The budget's the single biggest thing that happens. It happens right at the beginning of the year. Has to be certified by March 15th each year to the county about what our tax levy is going to be. Last year's budget, the one we're in right now, we have 23% borrowed money on a $25 million budget. Now, we can grow a community of businesses and grow a community to help support that tax load over a larger number of people. But that growth has to be managed. It's a ratio between the growth and the amount of money that's being spent. And right now, the money being spent is not favorable in that ratio. It's causing a debt load. That debt load is causing a big issue right now because we had originally scheduled to have Bremer Avenue, one of the worst potholed streets in the town, fixed in 2016. Because we have spent money on other projects, that has been postponed for a year to 2017, and that's just not acceptable. Yeah, you want to see the worst street in town, go out West Bremer Avenue, out by Mike's place.
Okay.
You got like gravel sections out there.
Okay, Mr. Infeld. Philosophy of city government.
Waverly is uniquely constructed. We have 5 wards. Each ward elects a person to represent them. We have 2 at-large members who represent the entire city. The mayor is elected to set the direction of the town, to work with the city government, to enable all the different needs of all wards to be met. When you have representative government, you have input into every person who will then be voting. The reach is for the common good. And we cannot keep all people happy all the time. But in the end, and this is important, we fund what we value. And we in Waverly value wonderful streets, nice parks, a town that's kept up. We value safety. We value the things that we fund. Everything that we fund in our government, we have chosen to fund because it's important to us. So my philosophy of government is, this is how it's done.
Okay. Mr. Kapler.
My answer to that is going to be about taxes. And tonight's Waterloo Courier had an article that was quite interesting about the rate of taxes in different communities in the area. And this company called Smart Assets had rated Charles City 4th out of this 10 with a tax of $1,154 as an average, Old-Wine $958 as an average, and Mason City, which is quite much more larger than us, and their tax average was $1,345. And Iowa as a whole is moderately tax friendly. And that's my add to this.
Okay. Ms. Walson.
Coming back to the question, I think, of philosophy of city government, I agree with many things that have been said here. I think it's very important that those of us who serve as city council members have a good ear to the citizens whom we represent, who are our constituents, that we are prepared and do our homework coming to these meetings, that we blend those two with our forward-thinking, reasoned approach to an issue or a request, whatever it might be, and that we then have a conversation around that, around this dais, and perhaps a debate, and we cast our vote because we believe that that's what's in the public good, in the greater good. And then whatever that vote is, we move on from that and look forward, not back to try to undo and redo. And that's just one part of it. The council is just one part. The staff has to execute, as Bob pointed out. But I also think we have to not micromanage the staff. I think that's part of city government. Do we have to look at the staff critically? Yes. Do we have to take that into consideration in our reasoning as well? But do we get into managing staff? No, I don't believe so. I don't think that's appropriate for our position. And we have to collaborate with them while having a critical eye. Of course, we have to work with the mayor, too. We're voting. The mayor does not vote. So there is a role for us in that relationship with the leadership position on council that we have to take very seriously and try to influence as best we can, and according to what we think is the greater good. So ultimately, I think it's my responsibility, or council's responsibility to serve the citizens of Waverly by doing those things that provide a quality of life in a forward-looking, collaborative, and reasoned fashion.
Thank you. This next set of questions are individual questions. I will ask individual people about their stance on issues. They don't know what the questions are. So the first question goes to Mayor Infeld. Looking at your first term in office, how would you describe your leadership, your interaction with the council, the city staff, your responsiveness to input, and what, after a learning curve of 2 years, would you do differently if you were elected again?
Well,
A lot of questions in one.
yeah, let me take a general stab at that, Nelia. It's been an enjoyable 2 years working with an outstanding city administrator in Phil Jones. And together we've created the energy. But an applause goes from me to the city employees as well, because they are implementing a forward-looking town. I listened to everyone. I've spoken to almost all the service groups many times. I always have an ear open to the common good. I think that bringing a sense of harmony is what I try to do in a fair way. What I like about the last 2 years is a sense of transparency that we have in the conducting of the city business. Every place in the budget, every place within the discussion of the budget, every place in the city council discussions has public input. And that is crucial to us moving forward. I've enjoyed leading that process. I've enjoyed relationships with the council members because it gives me a chance through it all to model that already spoken to a value that I treasure so much, and that is being for each other. I truly listen to those who disagree and try to incorporate and grow from that. And that modeling is hopefully my high water mark.
Thank you. My next question goes to Dwayne Little. Dwayne, you've been a watchdog of city government for much longer than most of the people who are sitting here tonight. This means that probably in one way or another, at one time or another, you've been on the wrong side of everybody in City Hall or just your neighbors for that matter. You've served on the council for a term and have run several times for various positions. You are one of the most tenacious people I know. You ask almost at every city council on behalf of the public, and sometimes your questions are answered and sometimes they're not. My question to you is this: what keeps you going? And if elected on November 3rd, what would you do to unite the staff and the council behind you to implement your vision?
Well, first of all, the thing that motivates me is my freedom. I absolutely cherish my freedom. And my freedom comes from the vets in this country that earned that, with all their suffering and their family suffering and whatnot. I never served in the military. I was in a time period when the draft was out. I figured I was going. I figured I was going to go to Vietnam and be shot up and come home in pieces. The idea that didn't happen just by a fluke of luck on a draw made me always felt like I owed something. I owed something back to the country that I lived in free all these years. I'm 62. I've been able to operate businesses and deal with people the way I wanted to all this time, and that's what freedom is. So that's what motivates me, because freedom is one generation away from being extinct. And I think that's a quote from Ronald Reagan.
What would you do? What would you do differently to unite people? Was part of my question. I want to make sure that I keep you on task here.
In some cases, you won't unite people because you will have different viewpoints depending on what the citizens of Waverly want. I am not a person that will sit back and wait for a citizen to come to me. When I know that something's going to affect a particular person, I go out to that person and I solicit their comments on their grounds at their time. because that's when you get honest responses and to the point. That's the information you need. Now, if the liberal group that has been promoting issues in Waverly promotes an issue and it's against the majority of the conservative people in Waverly, I'm not going to go work and follow that liberal issue. I'm going to challenge that issue. And then you present your cause, you present your case to the council, and then you see what they vote like. You'll win sometimes and you'll lose sometimes. But you got to put it out there. You got to take the risk.
All right, thank you very much. Dan, now you're first in this ward. You've worked so hard to keep the council on track. You've been very responsive to the paper when we've had follow-up questions for you. In your mind, is there a vote that you would like to do over? Is there a problem in the city council in how information travels from the staff to the council and back? And is there a budget concern on your mind as well regarding the budget, especially given the fact that that's a concern for a lot of people in town?
I knew I should have brought a pencil.
Well, the first one was about is there a problem? Is there a vote that you would like to revisit? Something that you really regret after having made the decision? Information has come to light that has made you rethink it?
I don't think so. I think there are times the council challenges the staff to get us more information on a timely basis. Sometimes, I guess I've been in enough leadership positions. It gets to a point, no matter how much information you want, you sometimes want more, but you still have to be able to make decisions. So I think I've got a strong enough network of contacts within the community that I can rely on when I need more information. I certainly reach out to them when there's things coming up. I've been challenged by landlords, a few other folks, to reach out to other communities to check on prospective developers, those type of things coming into town. And I just do that as a natural basis. I don't necessarily need to be challenged to do that. But again, it's having some vision. It's willing to take that vote and then move on. And if it needs to be revisited at some point, you revisit it.
Okay. Thank you. Bob, you know the city inside and out. You and I have sat here, right around here, and talked about the city in another forum when you were running for mayor. You served as mayor, and then you decided to seek a council seat, for those of you who don't know you, and then you lost that election. Does the city of Waverly really have a spending problem?
Oh, yes. Yes, we do have a spending problem. Right now, you can see, I think one person talked about it. We've got a lot of capital projects out there. Probably going a little bit too fast. I could see the execution of those projects slipping a little bit from previous years. Not to say staff's not doing a good job, but you can look at 4th Street, Jim Hunley's situation. I mean, that's where we got too many projects going on. We're not executing at the level of what we should be. And I think everybody wants us to execute better, and I think we can. So that's why I believe we're spending too much. I think even Waverly Power is having some struggles there on the budget. I believe you guys just put a report out. You're going to have a 10% increase in rates. Is that right next year?
He stole my headline for tomorrow's paper. Yes, there's going to be a 9.4% hike in utility rates in Waverly starting January of 2016.
So, that's something that, council and Waverly Power needs to come together, because we're one city, and Waverly Power is a unit of the city of Waverly, so we got to make sure that people can afford to live here and work in Waverly. So those are all factors that come into play.
And you mentioned Jim Hundley's situation. For the benefit of the people who don't know what you're talking about, what are you talking about?
That's a person on 4th Street that has some landscaping issues. And, it's not the end of the world, but some people knew about it a year in advance, and I think they should have known about it in a year in advance too to plan.
Okay, this is a question for the candidates of Ward 4. Since all of you are new to the situation in public life and your desire to serve, use this forum to help voters distinguish among you. in no particular order, why don't we just start with Ed White? Ed, why should people vote for you?
Well, first of all,
How different are you from Mike and from Adam?
First of all, I heard Mackenzie just say that we don't have a tax. We're trying to keep our taxes down. I own a lot of property in this town, and our taxes are going up about average 7%. Mayor Infelt sits there and tells us how great we are. We can be great. All of us can be great, but we've got a spending problem. And he doesn't want to address that, and that's why I'm down here. Because our problem is too much spending, ridiculous spending. All the other things, I'm all for. We can build on Waverly, being a great town. But one reason we're raising our rates 10% is because the money that City of Waverly is using the light and power as a cash cow. And it's been going on too long. And nobody wants to address that.
I am not sure what you mean by this, but I do know from reporting on that story that what the reason for the increase is the market fluctuation in the way the markets are configured and how Waverly Light and Power buys its power. That's what I understand. Right. That's what I've reported in tomorrow's story anyway, about why the increase. That is, it's outside of the scope of the utility itself. But back to your question. So, what sets you apart from your from Mr. Scher and Mr. Hoffman is that you will be doing what differently than them?
I don't believe that we should be giving Wartburg $600,000 a year. That's been going on for 7 years. When we've got a spending problem, I think we need to address that. All these people up here have told you how great Waverly is, and I think it is. But we don't have to spend money ridiculously like this. Wartburg has like an $80 million endowment fund. Let them get in their own pocketbooks instead of the taxpayers doing this.
Okay. And how about going to Mr. Hoffman, Adam?
I think
how different are you from the other two candidates?
Yeah, I think what sets me apart from my contenders, I guess you could say, is I have worked in the trenches, being in law enforcement in the county. With Rich, he knows what it takes to do his department budget. I've been in that position on a much smaller budget. Daryl can understand that as well. I know execution of how that has to happen and how you need to relate to your council that's making the decision on approving your budget and making sure that those things are met. There was one issue that came up during my guest council time here a year ago, which involved the police department. And having internal knowledge of how some of those things work can benefit those departments, whether it's a good expenditure or not. Collaborative efforts of representing the entire town, even though I sit in my ward. I don't know where any of you, or some of you, I don't know where you live or whether you're in my ward right now. But if you reach out to me and you're in Ward 2 or 3, I'm going to listen to you. And that's what needs to happen.
Okay, Mike?
Well, as a as a word person, I have to say I have a concern about language and the way we use it. And we can talk about spending, we can talk about investment. I'd rather talk about investment for the city of Waverly. I think that's what the city does and what it ought to do. And that needs to be linked to vision. The city of Waverly needs to be looking to the future and to see where we need to be moving. I have not been soliciting a lot of comments from people in my ward because they're all coming and talking to me. I'm amazed at all the people who have some opinion they want me to know about, and people who I didn't know that they knew me. And they say things like, Waverly is moving in a good direction, and we think it's about to stop doing that. And if you get elected, we expect you to make sure that it moves in the direction that it ought to move in. When I ask them what they mean by that, they say, we need to have a vision for the future because the city needs to be moving in a healthy direction. I went on the website this afternoon to see what the city of Waverly has to say, and I discovered that goals for the city of Waverly are 3: a high quality of life, friendly and forward-looking merchants, and I thought somebody should have added industries because we got plenty of them, and a college town atmosphere. Those are three things that I think are assets. And I think we ought to focus on our assets and not talk about what may or may not be wrong with the city, because I don't see a lot of things that are wrong with it, but I see we could lose out if we simply decide we ought to stop in our tracks.
Okay, thank you. Next, I will move to Edith, and this question is about you are the only woman on the council. You're running for the at-large position, which is you currently have. And tell us what kinds of help people have turned to you for, and how you view the relationship between the city and Wartburg.
The first question was what kind of
What kind of
help?
questions? Yeah, what kind of help or what kind of questions have people turned to you for? And kind of a follow-up is the relationship that Mr. White addressed about the relationship between the city and Wartburg.
Yep. I would say, I mean, on all of the larger issues that City Council has acted on in just the 2 years that I've been on City Council, I've gotten feedback and/or questions from on almost all of them. So everything from hearing from landlords when we're talking about housing issues or development projects, asking to see their point of view, take a particular position on it. There have been some concerns, also actually quite a few, that I've heard from citizens about in terms of city council interaction and what effect that's having on our reputation and whether we're working effectively and efficiently. So the Green Bridge, of course, lots of questions and positions on that as well. But they're not all the same. I mean, when you say people ask for help, I mean, on every single issue, I have heard at least 2, if not 3 or 4 different sides of it. And that's what I was referring to before, that I think it's very important to always listen carefully and to think about that input that you're getting. Do your homework, figure out what the facts are, not just what the next person has said, which sometimes is true and sometimes is not accurate. So that's what goes into, at least when I approach issues that we're going to be voting on, I'm always trying to balance that homework that I have to do with the feedback that I'm getting from citizens, which is, of course, very important. On the partnership, or on Waverly, Wartburg, my theme there is partnership, and I would not limit it to Wartburg. You don't see these days, I don't believe, very many entities being successful if they're not partnering. It is just the way of today and the future. And it's healthy. You gain more. You have more resources. You gain more by partnering. And whether that's a partnership with Waverly Utilities, with a hospital, with Wartburg, with a school system, you name it, Waverly has lots of partnerships. And I'm a real believer in continuing to have those. Public-private partnerships can be very, very fruitful if they're done properly.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kepler, one of your stated motivations for this office or wanting to run for office has been a personal issue that you told me you had with the police department in which you believe that you were treated unjustly. What other projects that the city is involved in, whether in the planning stages or whether they're underway, what other projects are of concern to you that also would be of significance to the community?
Well, to start with, Ed and I are on the same page with a lot of things. And I'm just totally against a lot of spending that happens without digging into it deeper why we can't tighten it up a little bit and talk to the departments and start asking them to start cutting expenses in departments or finding out ways that they can start cutting. But if elected and Ed is elected, I think we'd be a good team on the council.
Okay. All right, very well. Let me ask you, just everybody here around the table, is there a particular issue that is of importance to you that the council is not addressing at the moment? And anyone can jump in this. This is the third part of our discussion. Questions are thrown at the candidates, and anybody can jump and answer the question. Is there a particular issue that is of importance to you that is not being currently addressed by the council?
The issue of local option sales tax is going to be
Okay.
coming up for a vote in the next couple of years. I'm not quite sure when, but it's coming up pretty fast.
19.
As part of that, the language that was used in there said that we could use that money for street improvements. The word improvements got to be a weasel way word used to transfer money from local option sales tax, a fund that has been growing steadily because Waverly has a good economic base, and transfer that over into road use tax with the guise that road use tax wasn't getting enough money from the state, when in reality we're using road use tax for wages, and we're using part of it to make payments on the new building out northwest part of town. So when we're doing that, we're cost shifting the use from what people originally voted for. In improvements, when I promoted that tax at that time, yes, Dwayne Little did support a tax because it would generate revenue to replace and rebuild basically about 1,100 blocks of city streets. And without that kind of funding, there's no way to get beyond high-crown, seal-coated streets. And when you're taking that money out just to replace the problem you already have that you're trying to cure, it's going to be critical on how tight that language is in that ballot.
Okay, does anyone want to answer this?
Well, I was just going to add that most of the 1% option tax is used for public safety, and it wasn't put in there for that. And that's why we have a problem, too, with our streets. And until we can rectify making the language clear is what Dwayne's talking about, and I think that's what needs to be done. We don't get it here. Thank you.
Okay, so these again are questions about, again, they don't necessarily have to have an answer here. The more unanswered questions they are, the more the more debate will be generated later on. So don't feel like you have to respond, but if you would like to, you can.
And yeah, that process is going to be coming up. We do need to have a task force, chiming in with the citizens and what they want to see on the renewal. It's a tax that if we renew it, it can be used very effectively. And right now, 50% goes to public safety, and another 50% is supposed to go for roads. In the future, what will that be? That will what the citizens will help determine that, because it will be voted on by the public.
Okay, anyone else on this particular issue? Then we'll just move to another one that is on your mind that is not currently being addressed by the council.
I think that one issue that is not being addressed is what is the best method to get Phil Jones to reconsider his decision to leave the city?
Yeah, for those of you who don't know the story, Mike, would you summarize the story just briefly? Phil Jones?
Well, Phil Jones has been our city administrator for 3 years. He is about to leave to go into private industry. I think it's an enormous loss for the city. He's been a great public service servant. I don't realistically think that anybody is going to change his mind, but I certainly would be happy if somebody could.
Okay. Very well. The next question is asks a little bit about the reason. I'm asking people here to kind of decipher for us the reason for oftentimes the council decisions are made in a 4-by-3 vote. And I wonder if anyone would like to tackle this question, why the 4-3 numbers on transformative issues, on important decisions.
I'll tackle it. It used to be 7-0 all the time.
Okay.
And we've got some decent people like Westgate and some people that Dave Reznicek that have come on the council. And they don't pick winners and losers. Well, tell me who they do if you want to tell me.
We're not going to address the audience directly, though, because we'll just keep it here for now.
Okay.
And after the discussion, you can just talk to individual people.
But I'm just saying that these 4 people, if you want to just be basic about it, they're conservative people. And they know that we do have a spending problem. And they're not against spending money, but they're thinking about Waverly citizens' pocketbook without just, before this, when it was 7-0, these people would just say, yep, 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 yep. And I want to tell you this story real quick. I was at the council meeting, and there was a Weigel that was in this 4th Ward. And Mr. Wetzel was here talking about fiber optics. And he said that I cannot vote on this tonight because I have not talked to my constituents. And so I won't be able to vote on it. Half hour later, he voted, yep. End of story.
Yes, please. And then we'll just go to Gerald. Go ahead, Mayor.
First, we are very privileged in Waverly to have all these projects going and have a tax rate that's $14.05 per $1,000 of assessed value. That's moderate to low. Of this $14.05, $2.37 goes to debt reduction. That is very low. We are lower than Shell Rock, lower than Clarksville, lower than Charles City, lower than Waterloo. We do not have a spending problem. We have a growth on our hands because we've invested.
Okay. Mr. Kepler?
You asked a question why there's a 4-3 vote or 3 to 4 vote. If you elect one more conservative or one more liberal, that can be changed. And if I'm elected, I will join the conservative part.
Okay.
One more comment.
Yeah, please do.
We are nonpartisan.
The city elections are nonpartisan, yes.
Yes, and I, as the mayor, am nonpartisan.
Mm-hmm.
We look at each issue for what it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
We do not go conservative. We do not go liberal. We do not use those terms. We do not function that way as a city. I will not lead a city that functions that way. We function together. Sometimes we split. Why do we split? Because we don't agree. What we have to learn is how to be for each other when we don't agree, but there's differing ideas. That is fine. That is not a paralysis as long as we handle it correctly.
Decisions are obviously made. They're moved forward. Edith, did
No.
you want to say something? Just one second. I thought no?
You go ahead. You're ready to say something.
Okay. No, going with what I had wrote in the newspaper chimes in exactly with what you're talking about is actually, assessing needs versus wants and finding that value that was mentioned by just about everybody around the table here, and voting on values and vision and each individual, agenda item as it comes up. Each individual line item on the budget needs to be scrutinized. And when you're voting on the entire budget and passing it, you are passing each line item individually. So.
Did you
We
want
talk
to?
about-
Are we still talking about the 4-3? Is that what
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
looking for
yeah,
input
I think
on?
that's what's on the table.
Yeah, I think it has to do with what Mayor Infeld has said. We all have different opinions on things, and of course, those opinions are shaped by certain philosophies that we start with. The example that Mike Scher gave, comparing his language to Ed's language. Some of us see certain expenditures more as an investment. Others see it as just spending. And I think, what we all try to do, I hope, is, especially, I'll just speak for myself, because I often see some of the things we are acting on as an investment, and to do that prudently, to do it wisely, to watch all of the various signals of whether we are a healthy city or not, and all those financial indicators are positive. There is not a one that is a red flag that we're, in our audit or in our any kind of external rating that we have. There just aren't any. So I think, sometimes it's just it's always a difference of opinion, and maybe this 4-3 split, to my mind, has often to do with this different view, whether you're investing in something or whether you're just spending for spending's sake. The other thing that I see a difference on fairly regularly is I think some of us are more prone to not micromanaging the staff, and some of the rest of us want to micromanage the staff.
And a reminder that we're often 7-0.
Yeah, okay. Tell me just a little bit about housing development and residential housing development. What should be the policy of the city?
I'll take that question. I'll take that question because I've been building for 30 years. I said earlier we haven't gotten a dime for all our building and all the tax revenues we put into this town. And we have not received a dime, didn't want a dime. But this council sit right up here and approved $48,000 to a local builder. They also took $400,000 out of the hotel motel tax, other people in the motel, and put that brick up on that motel. And that's progress? This is what's upsetting to me. This is progress, giving a guy $48,000?
That's what progress is.
I
sir.
see. Then I'm wrong.
Can we talk about how we can move forward in terms of policy rather than just examples of what has angered us or what has concerned us? Please, yeah.
Yeah, I think a strong cohesion between planning and zoning and the council as a whole, to make sure, they have their goals and their direction of what they have to accomplish to provide to the council. I think knowing what, if they know what they can present to the council that's going to be effective for what the goals are with the city, and it's kind of they're representing the community by giving goals to the council to act upon. And it's our responsibility to still solicit back to the community what their recommendations are, to make sure that it follows with our goals for forward momentum.
Bob, you're quiet.
Yep.
That's a very unusual. You're very involved in. Very involved
That was a
in.
compliment, Bob.
Yeah, you're very involved, and I know that.
Well, speaking about housing development right now, we need, if you're going to do something, you set a policy. You don't do one-offs. You say this developer is this one, this developer gets this developer gets nothing. You set a policy so all developers are having a level playing field. That's a must, a very must. Number two is you got to look at what the state's doing. They are doing some changes on commercial property taxes for multifamily. So I think the multifamily apartment issue will fade away, but it's going to take some time because they're doing on a 10-year cycle or 10-year phase out, or not a phase out, 10-year reduction down to residential. I believe multifamily will go away over time, so you just have to, relax a little bit. Sometimes, this council wants to go really fast. We need to take a break a little bit, think about it, and just kind of wait for it to come.
I thought someone was complaining that it was going too slow at times. So we have a balanced view now that you're saying that sometimes it's going too fast.
Could I jump in?
Yeah,
real
please
quick?
do. Yeah, please.
I always find the conversation of taxes and spending and we're doing too much it seems at odd. I mean, you look at the Dry Run project, that's been something that's been talked about for 30 years, 40 years. We found an opportunity to partner with a funding stream through the state to minimize that cost. Unfortunately, we had people lose their homes through the buyout process, so it became a very doable project. And when I started talking to folks about it, one realtor said, if we don't do this project, based on some things the federal government's doing with flood insurance, there could be as many as 30% of those homes go through foreclosure. Again, that federal action has been kind of put on hold a little bit. But I look at it, we talk about housing. If we can get those houses out of the floodplain, on average, they're going to save $100 to $125 a month. That's money those families can put back into the community, into their pockets. So to say we shouldn't have spent the money to do the Dry Run, I think I question that. And again, timing, yeah, it's not the best time, but we've been able to rework the finances. People talk to me about the extension of 10th Avenue. Why did you do that? It goes nowhere. Well, it is going now to a developer that's going to put 35 lower moderate income lots in so that younger families can start out and put houses in there. we did that to spur the economy, to give people that want to come to the community an opportunity to come here. People are coming to this community when you go out and talk to them about, they see the school systems, they see the trails, they see the quality of life that they get in Waverly. Regardless of what you think our taxing situation is, people find value in this community. And we're probably one of the only small communities that have consistently grown the last 10 years. The only places in the state that grow more than Waverly are your large metropolitans, Des Moines, Ankeny, those type of things. So we must be doing something right if we're drawing people to the community and they want to be part of it.
I think also we've used a very conservative approach in terms of not doing abatement, but doing rebatement. What rebatement is that we wait for the new construction to take place. Then when they pay taxes, we rebate a portion for a limited period of time. That's not free money. That's their money that we've given back to them because the investment costs are so high. It really works. Now, private-public partnerships are becoming normative.
Okay, Adam wanted to say something earlier on.
I think the dry run project is going to really increase our valuations in town, in the fact that I've talked to several people that live in the floodplain right now, and once this project is complete and they're taken out of the floodplain, they've been locked into owning their home because they've put it on the market and nobody wants to buy it because it's in the floodplain. They would love to build a new $260,000 home and get out of their $120,000 home, but they can't. They can't get out of the home that they're in because that new owner is going to have flood insurance. Now that opportunity is going to exist, we're going to see, more property valuation.
Okay, this next question has to do with the current debt that the city has undertaken. So the question is, how comfortable are you with the current debt the city has? How comfortable are you?
Not at all. When it was brought up about how we found a funding stream for the dry run. What that really is a sales tax increment. How many more dollars with the sales tax are generated in the state, and from that, the state will determine how much it pays us. But we have to bond and pay for that project up front. And they maybe will replace us as long as the economy don't tank or the monetary system doesn't tank. Both are real possibilities right now. Because you get yourself up to where you're at your debt capacity, that you're self-imposed upon yourself as being comfortable where it should be, and we're at that capacity, you have no room for errors. You're flying real tight on your string of how the business of the city of Waverly can operate. If you take away that ability to bond because you've already reached your limit, your self-imposed limit, we could still go another 12 or 15% more, but to reach 100% of capacity. But if we ever had a disaster, natural disaster of some proportion like a tornado, like another flood, we would be in a very tight position to be able to raise the money we would need to recover from that disaster.
Okay, I see Mayor Infeld is cringing in his seat.
Yeah, well, it's just not true that we have a spending problem. We have, again, $2.37 debt load on every $14.05 of assessed value per $1,000. That is moderate to low. You can't change the facts. It's moderate to low. It's less debt load than Shell Rock I mentioned, Clarksville, right on down the line. This is manageable. We have extra capacity. This is also rapidly being paid off. We won't be entering into some new efforts for debt load for probably a couple of years. We moved while the iron was hot because we did the dry run. But 45% of that, which we're carrying the whole load in terms of our debt load, but 45% of it will come back to us from the state. So I'm saying that this is a city in fine shape, moving forward, excited about being Waverly, high energy. Everybody's talking about us. We got pride across the state. I don't see the issue.
Okay.
Can I say another?
Yeah, please, just one comment, short comment, and we'll move to
Mayor
something
Infeld
else.
is ignoring our bonds that we've taken out that have revenue streams, such as water, sewer, and solid waste. We have debt load in those areas as well as debt load that's serviced by the general fund, which is property taxes. And you can manipulate the numbers of what the levy is in relation to the assessed value of a piece of property. By your taxes can go up just by somebody arbitrarily saying, oh, and now your house is worth X many dollars more than it was last year. That's a phantom number, doesn't really mean anything because you can't establish value until you sell it.
Okay, we're just moving on to another question, and this one has to do with where you see yourself in the next 4 years. How comfortable do you feel in the next 2 years, in your case, as the mayor's position is only a 2-year position? So do you feel comfortable standing your ground if there is a divisive issue in front of you on the council and you have an issue that you're split on and your constituents are telling you one thing and another group is telling you another? Do you feel comfortable standing your ground?
Yes.
Anyone here? Yeah, I think
Absolutely, yes.
everybody owes it to the people just to say what they feel like. Dwayne?
You're elected to represent the citizens of Waverly.
Okay.
They're the ones that vote for you. They're the ones that are hiring you, so to speak, to do a job.
But what if your citizens are split? What if your ward is split? In your case, you're running for mayor,
We're still a democracy. We still vote on the majority rules. You still get all the information you can from both sides, debate it, flush out all the information you can get,
Sure,
and then make a decision.
sure. Edie?
Yeah, that's the same thing I've said before. I feel like I'm repeating myself, so I don't know that I have much to add to that. I guess I would say in response to a little bit into your comment, Dwayne. I mean, you don't do a straw poll of your constituents. It's difficult to do. You talk to as many as possible, and some of them contact you, and some of them don't. So in the end, your own homework, your own thought process, your own judgment, keeping the all of Waverly in mind is ultimately what you have to vote on. And yes, I don't have any problem voting on what I believe in and standing behind it after I've done careful work on it, not just arbitrarily or. Yeah.
And that's exactly why I solicit information from people. I don't
Okay.
wait for them to come to me.
Mayor?
You have
Go ahead, Adam.
you have to do your due diligence for your constituents that you represent. That's all there is to it. You know, just kind of what Edie said. You have to feel good in your heart, your mind, wherever that comes from, that you're putting that vote out there, making that decision to the best interest of those constituents based on all of the information you have, and being able to come back to a constituent that says, "Why did you vote that way?" and give them the basis for that confidently.
It's it's an interesting paradox in government that any elected official always has two choices. He has two responsibilities. One is to the people who elect you, and the other one is to your own conviction, and sometimes they don't match up. I think when it comes right down to it, you have to do what you believe. And if I think I'm right, and I get into a discussion, and I find out that Edie knows the truth and I didn't, I'll listen to her probably. I could change my mind. But for the most part, if I think I'm right, I'm going to stick with it.
Okay. No other takers on this question? That's fine.
I'd like to say
Go ahead.
some of my beliefs are just the opposite of Edie and this mayor, because we do have a spending problem. If they're going to run here and say that we don't have a spending problem, they're going to kind of say this is what's good for Waverly. But the reason I'm running is because we have a spending problem.
Okay, let me take a couple of issues that have to do with very specific stories that we've run in the paper and have become stories as a result of action or inaction. The Green Bridge, what should be done with the Green Bridge?
Should have been opened. Should have been opened last Monday.
That's right. Should have been.
We have an engineer who has a master's degree in structural engineering, steel, and a master's degree in concrete foundations, who meticulously went over every joint and fabric and beam of that bridge, and accounted for all the corrosion that happened, and calculated all the weights and loads that are applied to the bridge in different areas. Run it through a software program that is accepted as a standard by engineers for bridges. And then he went back and manually checked the calculations to see how come his calculations were different than those of VJ Engineering. Well, they were because VJ made errors in entry.
Okay. Other people here on the Green Bridge, what should be done?
It's a learning experience, so I think council and city staff should take back and think, what went wrong and how can we improve the processes next time. One of the things I would recommend as a council person is that study, when we went from a 2-year inspection to a 1-year inspection, that's a critical asset. That should have been, presented to council in a study session and said, okay, there's a change, critical asset, people, this is what potentially could happen down the road. We may have to close this. At that point in time, what would have happened in transparency is that people would have said, hey, let's get a study done now to see what the repairs are ahead of time. And that's probably one of the first things. Secondly, council needs to make sure that when they do go out to bid with an engineering firm, you've got to have a baseline. That's something that I've learned from my corporate experiences. What does it take to just make sure that what you have today get it back to that standard? You don't need to raise it up 3 feet. You don't need to increase the tonnage from 5 to 8 tons. You need to have a baseline so you can compare to make a good, solid decision. So those are things that, as a council member, you need to take back and make sure that we execute a little bit better next time.
I think there's a much larger issue, not to diminish the importance and the immediacy of the Green Bridge, but the larger issue that we really need to get going on is what is a long-term crossing plan for that part of town. The Green Bridge, yes, I know people are emotionally tied up in it, and it's, I understand all that, and we have to make a decision on it, no doubt. But far more important is the long-range plan of a bridge somewhere that serves the future of Waverly, not just the next 5 years.
I think what Edie's saying is we got to have that, but also start putting some money away for that time. I hate to say it, we don't have the money to replace a bridge this year. I don't care what anybody says.
You're right.
We don't have the money to replace that bridge with a $2 million or $1.5 million bridge. Ain't going to happen. Don't have the bonding capacity. So you do have to start putting some money away. We put some maintenance dollars away, but now we've got to start putting a little bit more in there for bridge replacement, and then have that decision come down.
Okay, and since we're leaving, almost, leading to the end of our program, I would like to go around the dais here and talk about one statement that you can make, one promise that you can make here for the voters tonight that you are going to keep if elected. This is simple, just one promise that you can make that you will keep if you're given the chance to sit here. In no particular order. Sure, if he wants to start, absolutely.
My promise is that I want to hear from citizens and listen to them, that I will always have a forward-oriented view, that I'm interested in collaborating with the citizens, with my fellow council members, even when we disagree, and with staff, and that I will always do my homework and come prepared to meetings to make the very best decisions I can for the citizens of Waverly.
Thank you. Gerald.
In conclusion, I asked Waverly voters to stay in contact with me. My point is, your concerns are my concerns, and what's best for my constituents, with straightforward, down-to-earth answers whenever possible. This is who I am.
Okay. Dwayne?
You'll always get a straightforward answer, and you always get it with a common sense tone to it. And I know the difference between investment and just spending money. They are not the same. There has to be a return on an investment. And it may not be dollars and cents, but there has to be a return, and it has to be able to measure it. Otherwise, it's just somebody's opinion. And we won't be giving opinions. whenever I've spoken to the public or asked questions in this chamber, I've done it with that mind that I always have a document, a discoverable document is called in a court of law, that can be presented to support the cause or what I'm saying. I don't
Okay.
just make opinions.
All right, very well. Mayor Infeld, one promise that you will pledge tonight that you will keep.
I promise to continue creating the energy from being for each other that will enable Waverly to become the next level of destination town, helping our businesses get more business, our schools gain more students, our town get new housing starts, our college to continue to be elevated, our river to be used better, that we can continue to become the town that we dream and want to become.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
I had the pleasure this weekend to tour the Elite Takedown. That's the new junior high wrestling department or wrestling center, and the 2 floors of housing for students, and they have lots of wrestling matches. But they also had Dan Gable there, and Dan Gable talked about what about motivation. And Dan Gable says, you got to look in the mirror every day and say, are you doing okay? And if you're not doing okay, what can we do better? And I know Waverly can get better. We're not, even when I was mayor, I gave my mayor grade a B because we can always improve. And as Waverly, I know we can do that.
Okay, Dan?
I guess what you can expect from me is when we disagree, I will share unbiased information with you to try to at least educate so that we can, if not come to the same answer, at least understand why we've got different answers. I will not tell you what you want to hear. I will tell you what the facts are, and then we'll make our own decisions from there. And I will work as hard as I can to make this town a place you want to live in. And especially in my case, I've got 2 children who live outside of town, and they are both talking about moving back to town when they start raising kids and that type of thing. And I hope that I leave a community so that they do want to come back.
Thank you. Adam?
My commitment to the constituents is to have open communication with you back and forth as need be, and then vote accordingly after assessing the needs versus wants conditions of any topic or item. After reviewing those and determining that return on investment, those are very key points to not only my ward but the entire community.
Okay, Mike?
My promise is to pay attention to the wise words of Jeremy Bentham, British philosopher, who said our task and our opportunity is to serve the greatest number for the greatest number of people, the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And I think that would serve us all very well if we would all keep that in mind.
Okay, and Ed?
I promise to run the city like a business. It hasn't been run like a business for a long, long time, and that's what I promise to do.
Well, thank you all for coming here tonight. And as the editor of the newspaper, I promise you that we will stay focused on all that's ahead of us. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.